Těsně před pražským vystoupením Devin Townsend Project jsme se setkali s lídrem projektu Devinem Townsendem, kanadským umělcem, multiinstrumentalistou a zpěvákem. A připravili jsme pro něho pár otázek. You use a number of different software and hardware in your recording and different units for effects, Pro Tools and Stenberg Cubase and Ableton Live and all these kind of things. So when you're recording, mixing, producing, and so I read also that you love, you're obsessed by these different echoes and things.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And it seems like you want to create ever something more than just the music, but all these like soundscapes, they're taking the listener to some imaginary world. And your album sounds then like a real soundtrack to your experiences in the world.
Fully, yeah. I mean, I think the way I write has always been, it's like a direct correlation to what's going on in my life, right? Like, I remember very distinctly when I was like 12 years old or whatever, it was the back of my parents' house, it was like raining and, I wrote some guitar riff, I forget how it was of course, but that reminded me of that moment, right? So I think when I record, I try and just use technology to kind of replicate like what it felt like, I guess. So, if it's rainy, there's certain types of notes and chords that like work well with that sort of, frame of mind. And echo seems to always give like sort of a wet environment too, right? And conversely, if there's things that are very like introspective, or if there was a moment that was like dark, then I think you can make like the guitars a lot more sparse or whatever. So I think in a way I'm trying to just represent the moments that resulted in those songs through production, right? And I've never gone out of my way to try and, consciously make an environment for the listener as much as I have just like, I'm very aware of what the moments were like that resulted in the songs. So it's just more of a matter of trying to replicate that like circumstance while you're listening to it, or while I'm listening to it more, right? So echoes, Ableton, Melodyne, all that stuff, I mean, it's just tools, right, for sure.
You ready?
How did you actually create this set of effects that you are using now? Is there some interesting history behind, or could you tell us something about the evolution of all this?
Sure, yeah. I mean, on guitar, I have this guitar unit, GP100, and it's like an old discontinued Roland unit, but I was in Japan like maybe in 92 or 93 or something, and Roland brought me over to do this guitar clinic, and they just gave me this unit, and I remember thinking, well, what am I going to do with this? It's cool, but I mean, what am I going to do with it? And I just took it home, and it's one of those things where you just keep picking away at a unit, and then eventually you start writing based on the sound that you've created, and then all of a sudden that sound ended up on every record I've ever done, right? So I think that's with guitar. And for vocals, I remember, I never really had like a lot of gear when I started, of course, so I remember I was recording some band in some shitty little studio, and they had an SBX90, one of those really cheap Yamaha echo units, reverb units, whatever. And the preset on it was called stereo delay, and it was 300 milliseconds on one side and 500 milliseconds on the other, so it doesn't actually like ping pong, it just becomes this kind of like random haze of echoes, right? And I've ended up using that effect on like my vocals for forever, right? So really it's not, there's no wizardry to it at all, it's not like there's some special, other than the GP100, there's no like essential effects. In fact, I can get my sound out of pretty much any plug-in that comes free with Pro Tools or whatever. It's, again, just kind of like trying to figure out what I want and then pinpointing it, right?
You were offered an endorsement deal with PV, and you're using now PV guitars. And also amplifiers.
Mm-hmm.
And as I see, you have there already your son.
Yeah, they've been very supportive with the Heavy project. You know, I think that this is like a version of the guitar that we're going to be releasing for the Heavy Project, but it's for the Heavy Project alone, right? I've been working with Peavey for several years now, and they've been very gracious in terms of their support for the band and PAs and things like this. And I had used Peavey and Buddha amps for a while, but I actually ended up going to Fractal, which is like a digital amp system, which actually isn't owned by Peavey. But I'm still with their guitars, and again, this is like the one that I kind of worked on with them, and it's a 7-string, and I mean, it's pretty heavy metal guitar, right? It's not, you're not going to be playing country with this thing, right? But I think that, you know, our plan is to release it simultaneously with Deconstruction, and it's the guitars that I used on the record, and, you know, in terms of like a big complicated record, I mean, it's a big complicated guitar, right? So, hallelujah. You know, the guys at PB, they've been very gracious, right?
And do you have designed it alone or with the guys?
Well, they had a luthier that they kind of hooked me up with, and you know, and I told them I wanted it to be thick and, you know, 7-string, and so there's elements of it, right? But I'm definitely not like a guitar designer. I think that, truth be told, if I wasn't, the only reason I'm doing a signature with Peavey is because, or this signature with Peavey is because if you're going to do a signature, I think you might as well do something that hasn't really, you know, been done too many times before. And I mean, yeah, there's 7-string flying V's. I know ESP's got a good one, but there's a couple differences. You know, some glow-in-the-dark shit on the side, and you know, I got these big booties on it and whatever, right? But I mean, in terms of me and guitar, I mean, I'm very connected to actually bass guitar. I prefer playing bass more of the time than guitar. And when it comes to guitar, if I'm not playing a big heavy metal guitar, I usually just play like a Telecaster, right? So, or an acoustic guitar, right? So, but the work that I've done with Peavey has resulted in this guitar, and it's going to be specifically for Deconstruction, right? And I'm very happy with it.
When you have used this PV amplifiers, it was 5150?
I did, but again, no longer.
No longer. And why have you decided to use now a digital amplifier?
Well, we're all in-ears, and there's a certain level of consistency to it, like that I come to rely on, you know, in terms of sound at least. I mean, it's definitely broken down a couple of times on me, but that's just because I treat everything in my life poorly, right? So, you know, the things that last in my life are usually the things that can take abuse. It's specifically gear, right? But the Fractal unit is convenient for me for heavy music because it's like very consistent. And for example, the guitar sound on Deconstruction is like one cable straight out of my Fractal into the board. Like that's it. You know, so the entire guitar sound on Deconstruction is like one cable straight out of my Fractal box, right? And then I can take that same sound and use it live, and you know, it's convenient for me, right? But I mean, again, I think it's like if I'm not using the Fractal, what I tend to use is like a buddy of mine's got this old Fender amp that, you know, you can plug a Telecaster into it, and there's a great sound. So it's either complicated or simple, right? Again, right?
And how does your home studio develop looks like?
It looks like a place I used to keep lawnmowers. It's cool. I mean, it's like, it's not a studio, it's like a garage, and I put down some shitty floorboards, and I don't have a lot of gear, but I got some cool gear, you know what I mean? I've got some like, oh.
By the way.
Oh, thank you. Very nice, man. Yeah, it's very cool, man. Oh, we're playing it again? Holy cow. Thank you. I had no idea we were playing. I guess we're playing Brutal Assault again. Right
Yes.
on.
Yes.
That's awesome. My studio, I don't have a lot of gear, but the gear that I do have, I'm satisfied with. I've got like Pro Tools, a smaller Pro Tools HD thing. I run into a Mac. I've got like 2 preamps and a compressor. 2 preamps and 2 compressors actually. And then that's it. And a couple old TVs and a bunch of dodgy movies. But I mean, it's all just like, I do some stuff at home, but a lot of it I actually go to studios that are like really well designed and actually pay that so that I don't have to like compensate for my lack of engineering knowledge. I mean, however, I did mix. I've mixed like almost everything recently, right? And I think I'm pretty good at mixing. But again, it's like I don't know what I'm doing. I just keep turning knobs until it doesn't sound bad.
And you prefer to use some better technique or equipment when you are on stage? Or?
Well, no, I use the same thing on stage that I use in the studio. Yeah, I mean, the same guitar for deconstruction, same amplifier with the fractal. You know, I mean, I don't, I'm a bit of a slave to routine, I think. You know, it's like when I find something that works, it's more about getting the song done rather than experimenting with like gear, right? So.
Okay, I see. Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you very much. That's really awesome. Nice to meet you.